How are you feeling today? Have you ever noticed that the kindest people you've ever met are often the most tired ones? They are the ones who always show up at the right moment, always listen, always ready to help, and rarely ever reveal that they're exhausted. They have a smile that puts others at ease. But in their eyes, if you look closely enough, there is something very subtle. A quiet fatigue and emptiness, as if they've lived too long in the role of the good person. We grew up in a world that worshipped kindness. From the time we were children, we learned that to be loved, we must yield. To be praised, we must help. To be accepted, we must not upset anyone. And so, we slowly equate kindness with existence itself. We think that if we are always proper, always gentle, then no one will ever leave us. But there is something few people realize. Sometimes, the thing we call kindness is no longer a free choice. It is a reflex. A habit carved so deeply into our nerves that if we stop, we feel afraid. Afraid of being disliked. Afraid of being left behind. Afraid that if we stop being kind, we will no longer be loved. And from there, kindness begins to change meaning. From a seed of love, it slowly becomes a mask, a shell that earns us praise for being good, while inside is a soul gasping for air. When kindness no longer begins from love, but from fear, it is no longer light. It becomes a form of survival, a way for us to keep existing in this world, even if it means sacrificing ourselves. And that is the moment the first shadow of kindness appears. So soft, so quiet, yet enough to change the entire person within. Every story begins very early, not in adulthood, but in the years when we were still children, when we first realized that the love of others is not always free. A child understands very quickly the things adults don't need to say, that when it behaves, others are pleased. When it yields, others praise it. When it hides its anger to smile, it gets hugged. And so, in a very deep corner of its young mind, it engraves a lesson that seems harmless. To be loved, you must make others happy. From that moment, kindness is no longer natural. It becomes a survival strategy, a subtle mechanism the brain creates to help us be accepted. And every time we sacrifice a bit of ourselves in exchange for validation, the brain rewards us with a sense of safety, a fragile kind of safety, but enough for us to become addicted to it. Then we grow up, continuing that reflex without ever realizing it. We smile when we don't want to. We nod while our hearts are full of resistance. We say, "It's okay," while our chest is cracking. Each time that happens, a small part of us dissolves, and once again, we are praised for being good. At some point, we no longer know where our true self ends and the performance begins. We become a professional, kind person, always pleasant, always appropriate, always knowing how to make others feel at ease. But inside is a soul curled up tightly, trying to breathe beneath the costume of perfection. Kindness, when it becomes a means of survival, will slowly steal the soul of the one who carries it. Because it no longer comes from love, but from the fear of not being loved. And when that fear has seeped all the way down to the roots, a person stops living for themselves and starts living for the comfort of those around them. From here, a new form of exhaustion emerges, a kind of fatigue that cannot be healed by rest, because it does not come from the body, but from having lived too long as a version that isn't ourselves. And from that exhaustion, kindness begins to crack, revealing the shadow beneath it. There is something very strange that happens when you have lived too long in the role of the good person. At first, you are kind because you want to be, but slowly you become kind because you have to. Because if you refuse, someone will be upset. If you speak your truth, someone will be disappointed. If you're tired, someone will think you've changed. So you choose silence. You keep smiling, keep nodding, keep being agreeable, even when it makes you feel suffocated. every outwardly kind action begins to turn into an invisible contract between you and the world. I will take care of everyone as long as no one leaves me. And when kindness is bound to fear, it is no longer light. It becomes a mask. The mask is beautiful. It makes everyone like you. Everyone calls you a good person. Everyone comes to you when they need a place to pour out their burdens, but almost no one asks if you're tired, because you yourself have forgotten to ask that of your own heart. Then one day, you suddenly realize you no longer know what is real and what is performance. Every word, every smile, every nod has become a defensive habit, an automatic mechanism to ensure you don't hurt anyone, even when the cost is yourself. And the most ironic part is, the world praises you for that mask. The more exhausted you are, the more compassionate you're seen as. The more you endure, the more they call you a good person. No one sees that you are slowly disappearing. Kindness, when forced, is no longer a gift. It becomes shackles, binding your soul to the mold of perfection. You still smile, still help, still care. But everything now happens behind a fogged glass. Inside, you are just someone trying to breathe. And when kindness becomes a mask, it will begin to suffocate the one who wears it, slowly, softly, but relentlessly, because you fear that if you take it off, no one will recognize you anymore. When you've worn the mask of kindness for too long, there will come a moment, very faint, when you begin to hear your own breath grow heavy. Not because you've done too much, but because everything you do goes against a part of yourself. You say yes when your heart wants to say no. You smile while something inside you is breaking. You nod to keep others at ease, then go home and wonder, and my heart, who will keep it at ease? The more you try to please, the more you feel yourself disappear. No one notices, because on the outside, you are still gentle, still appropriate, still the one everyone trusts, everyone turns to. Only you know that each time you say, I'm fine, your heart shrinks a little more, and then one day you begin to feel conflicted with your own kindness. You no longer know whether you help out of love or simply out of fear of being disliked. You begin to feel anger, a vague, soft anger, but real. Anger because no one cares about your feelings, because no one asks if you're okay, and anger at yourself for allowing this to continue for so long. That is when kindness begins to distort. It is no longer light, but becomes a subtle form of self-destruction, like a gardener who keeps watering every plant in the garden except the roots of their own. Until one day, the gardener collapses, and the whole garden begins to wither too. Kindness without boundaries is not love. It is a form of abandoning yourself. And what's frightening is that we still believe we are doing the right thing. So, kindness doesn't make us stronger. It makes us weaker. It doesn't make us more loved. It makes us more dependent. It doesn't make us shine. It makes us fade among all the yeses given too easily. And from within that fading, something else begins to form, something we don't want to name, yet it keeps growing inside us, repressed anger, a simmering flame, never bursting outward, but burning quietly from within. There is a paradox that few people ever notice. The kinder you are, the easier it is for others to forget you. Kindness without boundaries begins to create a circle of dependence. People around you become accustomed to you always being there, always available, always gentle, always nodding, and then they stop asking whether you want to help. They stop asking whether you're tired. They stop recognizing that you too are a human being with limits. Unconsciously, your very kindness has taught others that. Your feelings are something that can be postponed. Your needs are something that can be set aside. and your peace can be sacrificed to keep the harmony. Kindness, when it becomes a reflex, is no longer a gift you offer to someone, but a silent acceptance that other people are more important than I am. The world slowly learns to lean on you. They call you a good person, but sometimes that name is simply a subtle way for them to keep receiving without feeling guilty. And you begin to shrink inward because each time you say no, you feel guilty. Each time you want to stop, you feel selfish. You become a prisoner of the very beautiful image you created. And the greatest paradox is this: the kinder you are, the more invisible you become. No one truly sees you anymore. They only see the pleasant version of you that they've grown used to. You exist everywhere, yet you don't truly appear anywhere. A loneliness wrapped in the garment of politeness. This trap is not built by anyone else. It is woven little by little by your own longing to be loved. You did nothing wrong, you simply loved too much. So much that you forgot love also needs a path back to yourself. And when kindness drifts off its natural orbit, it is no longer a guiding light, but a loop with no exit, where you keep giving until there is nothing left to give. But every trap shares one common sign. Before it tightens, you will hear a small sound, very faint, from deep within yourself. A whisper reminding you, it's time to stop. One day, you suddenly realize your exhaustion no longer comes from work, nor from the people around you, but from the very thing you once felt most proud of, your kindness. At first, it's just the heaviness in your chest when someone asks for help and you can't say no. Then come the sleepless nights from taking on too much. The unfinished meals because you're listening to someone else's sorrow. You slowly lose sleep, lose focus, and lose even the small joys meant for yourself. Others look at you and say, "You're so dedicated," but only you know you're hollowing out inside, no longer having time to breathe, to listen to yourself. Even the things that once made you happy now feel like obligations. Your mind begins to send warning signals, but you call them by other names. I'm just a bit stressed. I'm fine. It'll pass soon. But the truth is, it doesn't pass because you don't need rest. You need to come back to yourself. Psychologists call this compassion fatigue, exhaustion caused by too much empathy. When you give away so much understanding that you no longer have enough energy to be understanding toward yourself. Your body reacts as if it's in a battle. Rapid heartbeat, heavy head, shallow sleep, and all emotions becoming blurry. No one sees this because on the outside, you're still warm, gentle, and a good listener, but inside, you are draining away. You still smile, but that smile no longer reaches your heart. When kindness is no longer nourished by love, it begins to consume the very energy that created it. Like a candle burning endlessly for others, forgetting, it also needs a pause to avoid burning itself down. And so, exhaustion becomes more than fatigue. It becomes a disconnection from your own essence, a quiet distance between I am living and I am merely existing. From there, a silent question arises within you, not loud, not dramatic, but enough to shake your inner world. Is this kindness still love? Or is it simply the fear of being abandoned wearing the mask of love? That question, is this kindness still love or just fear? At first sounds very small, but if you pause and listen, it begins to spread slowly like a thin crack on the surface of a mirror, then gradually widens, reflecting back everything you once avoided. You begin to realize something that seems simple. All this time, you have never truly known how to love yourself. Because how can someone love themselves when their love has always been built upon the approval of others? It's not that you never loved yourself. You just never dared to place yourself on equal ground with others in that love. You give, but you don't dare receive. You forgive others easily. Yet you are harsher on yourself than anyone else. You protect everyone else's feelings. Yet downplay the wounds within your own heart. That is not love. It is submission wrapped in compassion, a kind of love that was taught, not nurtured. And then, as you begin to awaken, everything you once felt proud of suddenly becomes frightening. The pleasant smile, the endurance, the ability to carry everything, all the things that once earned you respect are now the very things that exhaust you the most. You realize that you've lived your whole life just to become someone everyone needs, but no one truly understands. And what hurts even more is this. You no longer understand yourself either. But the miracle is that very moment of realization, that very pain, is the first step of healing. Because to love yourself again, you must dare to look directly at every place where you once abandoned yourself. You must face the emptiness, the resentment, and the fear of being forgotten. And understand that kindness cannot save you if it is not born from the compassion you give to yourself. When you realize that, something deep within you begins to shift. Not the scream of anger, but the soft exhale of the soul, as if it has been waiting for so long to be acknowledged, to finally be told, I too deserve the same kindness I have always given. After realizing you've lived far too long in the role of the good person, the first thing you need to relearn is not how to love others, but how to stop at the right moment. Because kindness does not need to disappear. It only needs a healthy boundary to exist without hurting you. Like a river. Without banks, the water will overflow and sweep everything away. Boundaries are those banks. They don't stop you from loving. They keep you from being carried away. But setting boundaries is not easy. For those who have lived their whole lives trying to please others, boundaries feel like selfishness, like withholding love. And so every time you want to say no, a wave of guilt rises inside you. But there is one truth. Boundaries are not a closed door. They are an honest promise. They say, I still love you, but I also need to love myself. They do not push others away. They keep love from becoming distorted by exhaustion. Boundaries help us recognize where kindness should stop, where love no longer flows from fear, but from knowing ourselves. They teach us when to help and when to let others stand on their own, when to listen, and when to remain silent to protect our inner peace. And strangely, when you begin to set boundaries, some people will leave. Those who have grown accustomed to receiving without ever giving. Those who loved the pleasant version of you, not the real you. Their departure hurts, but it purifies. It teaches you that lasting relationships do not require limitless kindness, but mutual honesty and respect. From there, you begin to realize saying no does not make you lose love. It makes love clearer. It doesn't make you cold, it makes you truthful. And truthfulness is the highest form of kindness. Then one day, you will understand that. When you love others from a place of peace, rather than from the fear of being abandoned, your kindness begins to shine differently. It is no longer a reflex, but a choice. No longer submission, but companionship. And perhaps only then, you truly understand the meaning of kindness. Not to be loved, but to love in the right way, beginning from the place you once forgot within yourself. One day, you stand in front of the mirror, looking at your own familiar face, the same smile, the same eyes, but you no longer recognize the person staring back. Because after so many years playing the role of the good person, you realize you've lost the most important thing, your own truth. All the yeses, the polite smiles, the times you forced yourself to appear fine, suddenly feel unbearably heavy. as if every "I'm fine" were a thick layer of powder covering a real face slowly being forgotten. You suddenly understand the kindness you once believed was light had actually become an intricate mask, molded from the fear of rejection, painted with the belief, "Only when I am gentle will I be loved." But every mask has cracks, and when it begins to fracture, you don't just hear the sound of breaking, you hear your soul exhaling. Finally, I can be real. The truth is, removing that mask is not betrayal, it is a homecoming. Because true kindness doesn't need performance. It doesn't need witnesses, it doesn't need praise, it doesn't need a role to play. True kindness comes from stillness, from being able to say no and still feel at peace, from being able to pause, rest without feeling guilty, from no longer trying to be seen as a good person, but simply being a true one. You begin to realize the boundaries you set don't create distance. They bring you closer to yourself and to those who truly know how to love. Because only when kindness is no longer a mask can it become a mirror, reflecting sincerity and inviting others to be real with you too. From here, kindness is no longer an obligation. It returns to its original nature, a natural flow born from pure love, from wholeness, not from lack. And when you can live this way, when you can give without needing to prove, help without needing to be seen, love without needing to be returned, you suddenly realize this is true kindness. No longer fearing being disliked, no longer needing recognition, no longer exhausted from keeping an image. Only quiet remains, and a smile not made to please anyone, but because you have stopped losing yourself. When the mask finally falls, everything suddenly becomes quiet. No more forced yes, no more exhaustion from trying to please the world. Only a stillness remains, as if something inside you has finally returned to its true home. You begin to understand that kindness was never the problem. The problem was believing that kindness must come with sacrifice. That to love others, you must forget yourself first. That to be accepted, you must always be agreeable. But now you know. True love never asks you to disappear. When kindness arises from a whole soul, it doesn't make you fragile. It makes you radiant, a light that does not blind, but warm enough to illuminate the path for others without burning yourself. True kindness is not always giving, but knowing when to stop to refill your own cup, not always agreeing, but daring to speak the truth even when it displeases someone, not always gentle, but standing firm in your values without apologizing for them. This is the highest form of kindness. Kindness with a backbone, with wisdom, and with freedom. Because now you understand. The kindest person is not the one who gives the most, but the one who knows how to love without losing themselves. And once you love yourself deeply enough, your kindness will naturally expand, not as an obligation, but as a peaceful presence. Others will feel safe around you, not because you always yield, but because they sense the energy of someone who has truly reconciled with themselves. This is kindness that does not need proof, does not need a name, does not need to be seen. It simply exists, like light, like breath, like your very essence. And perhaps this is the kind of kindness the world needs most. Kindness with boundaries, with truth, with the courage not to disappear. If you are on the journey of learning to love yourself more, if you too are tired of always being the good one, remember this: you are not alone. You are simply removing the mask the world once placed on you. And in doing so, you are returning to the most authentic form of kindness. Kindness that is gentle without abandoning yourself. If something in this video resonated with you, leave a comment below. Your sharing might reach someone who is quietly going through the same thing, And if you want to continue exploring journeys of awakening and healing, subscribe to Mindora, turn on notifications, so you won't miss any stories on the path back to yourself.